Hi, I am Allison Ray. I'm the founder of the Intuition Center. I have a bachelor's degree in human services, an associate's degree in liberal arts. My major was in psychology and my minor was in business management. This would actually be my third business. I'm an ex-hairdresser, and I knew during COVID that I was ready to embark on more of a spiritual path. When I was a hairdresser, it was more of my financial career, right? Like my financial goals. I knew during COVID that I wanted to kind of revamp my life. I have been a career intuitive advisor for 8 years paid, but my intuition, like my spiritual journey, started about 15 years ago. This project is important to me because the other platforms that I had worked on, I did not feel that I truly had the ability to help other people. So I always wanted to create a platform where people could actually get guidance and help, right? It's not just about, somebody coming on and I call it psychic prying you, where they just, ask you questions, and what's going to happen. 90% of our life is what we make of it. It's what we do. So if we do this, then this will happen. For every action, there is a reaction. And the platforms that I had worked on, they really didn't create the space for that. I also wanted to create an environment where people were paid fairly and where there was room for opportunity, because on a lot of these advisor sites, you would be surprised, what the advisor is actually being paid out at the end of the day. And it's a filter. You're talking through a filter. So that filter is of whatever that other business's plan is. So I wanted to create kind of a filter-free space where you can truly find an advisor that you connect with and ask them questions and get straight answers, where they're not overly censored, where both the client is paying a fair price and the advisor is being paid a fair commission. So my mission on the Intuition Center is to help people become who they truly aspire to be. So creating the platform was so that I had a space where I can be who I feel I'm supposed to be as an advisor. But on the personal end, for the client that comes onto the site, I want it to be where they can actually come and ask for help or guidance or motivation, whatever it is that they're looking for, feel that they're actually getting the assistance to become who they aspire to be. So this is, for me, I'm looking at both sides. I want everyone to feel like when we come here, when we are at the Intuition Center, we don't walk away feeling disempowered, demotivated, our dreams were crushed, and the advisor doesn't walk away feeling disempowered, demotivated, and, like they're working to try to make money, but they walk away from it asking themselves, like, did I actually help anybody today? So I'm trying to look at this project on both sides so that both people walk away and say, hey, when I came here, this was worth my time. This was worth my money. I feel empowered. I might not know the whole path, but I know the next couple of steps that I need to take in my journey. So let's go to Jen. Jen, who are you? And, what's your personal mission here?
Well, my name is Jennifer L., and I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in counseling. I've been doing intuitive work for about 15 years, although I discovered my gifts probably 25 years ago, but started working as an intuitive about 15 years ago. I'm trained in Akashic record readings. I am trained in mediumship. I'm trained in Reiki, as well as working intuitive fairs over the years and having private clients for the last decade or so. My mission is somewhat similar in that I really want to empower clients to tap into their own intuition so that they don't need us as much. I like for people to feel like they can be their best selves, like they can increase their own gifts. They can tap into their spirit guides if they want to. If they have other goals that they have on their spiritual journey, I would like to help them attain that. Everybody could benefit from finding inner peace, whether that's through meditation or other channels. And that's something that I've helped people with over the years. So really, I would love to just be able to help people on their life's journey, on their spiritual path.
Okay, Jade, so who are you and what is your mission at the Intuition Center?
Well, my name is Jade St. Clair. I have a bachelor's in criminology and as well as in English literature and creative writing. I have always done this type of work on the side. I have been doing tarot and psychic mediumship in traditional shops for about 17 to 20 years. I have been working on a platform here and there for the last about 6 months. And I found that while I liked the platform work, I wasn't feeling as much connection as I would like with a client. My mission is to make that client and advisor connection. I want the person to walk away feeling like they have gained something and feeling like they have, so to speak, leveled up a little bit on their spiritual and even emotional journeys. Because I have noticed that when I speak to clients after a session, the main concern that I get is it wasn't enough time. And since I've been told it wasn't enough time multiple times, I have thought to myself, well, wouldn't it be great if there were a way to give the client as much time as they wanted, so that they could ask all the proper questions. And then it leaves them feeling like not only do they have something to work with, that when they come back next time, we can build on what they have learned. So we get to know each other together. As they level up as a person, I increase my own personal spirituality and connection with people. So I really am looking for that exchange, and I'm looking for the person to walk away feeling like, yes, I found the right place. I found the right person. And it also helps to have colleagues that I can refer them to. Should they not be able to get what they need from me, I can say, I have this colleague that I think would really be able to benefit you. So I think that those are really important things that are often overlooked on platforms. And even when it's one-on-one, the shop only gives you so much time. Your hour is up, they leave. And with this, I feel like the person would be able to make more decisions that better suit their intuitive health and their emotional and spiritual growth.
Okay, Joanne, who are you and what is your mission at the Intuition Center?
Hi, I'm Joanne, and my mission is to help others heal in all ways. And I really want people to live their best life. I feel like there are so many people in the world that just need someone to talk to. They just need to be heard, they need to be seen, and they need to be listened to. And that's really what my mission is, to really see you for who you are and help you get to wherever you want to be. So I've been a coach and a counselor for the last 15 years. I have a degree in counseling and a degree in communications. My master's is in counseling. So I really want to help people see their best selves and see that they have the potential to live in the way that they truly desire. I think a lot of people don't understand sometimes that they have choices and options. And I've been working also on a platform for the last 3 years, dealing with people intuitively, my intuitive gifts I've had for my whole life, but I've been working as an intuitive for the last 15 years and on a platform for the last 3. And with the platform, it's hard to reach people in a way that I really want to empower them to see all the gifts that they have and see all the choices and ways that they can help themselves. So that's really what I want to do here, is get more connected with people so that they can see their own true power and move forward in their lives, whatever way that is.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you guys is about your childhood and being an intuitive. Was that something, just very simply, that was, fostered for you as a child, like being an intuitive? Or was it something that was kind of beaten out of you or you were taught to repress? Did you grow up in a home where you were aware or able to talk to other people about your gifts?
Well, my mother is actually an extremely intuitive person. So she never discouraged me from using that ability, but she also never fostered it because my mother had no idea what was going on with her. However, I guarantee you, it did not matter where I was, what time I was supposed to be there, or what time I was supposed to leave. She knew where I was always. And this was before the age of cell phones and things of that nature. There's no way she could have known other than intuitively. And I remember I sat down with her one day and asked her, how do you know these things? And she said, I just know. And I feel like as you get older, you will just know too. And my mother also knew was something that she said. My grandmother is just like that. But as I got older, it kind of got to be a thing where she would say, well, you need to grow up and not really focus on this type of magical thinking. You really need to just work on developing actual real world skills and not rely on this. So there was a time when it was discouraged. but I did not listen because I was always so firmly entrenched in it that it was something that came naturally, and you can't really discard a natural part of your personality. So it was encouraged for a while. And then she kind of got into this mentality. She got into the corporate world, and she got further and further away from what she was doing and kind of tried to push it on me, but I didn't listen. And now we have reconnected in that way, and she is learning from me.
Yeah. So I would say I shut down my own gifts, out of fear when I was young. My empathy has always been strong. My parents would very much encourage that. I would walk around the neighborhood talking to everybody, always concerned about others and their well-being. And my parents absolutely fostered that. That's really my gift, is my concern for others, my empathy, more than, I would say, my intuition. Even though my intuition plays a part in that, I feel like my parents really fostered the empathy within me. So I was lucky. Well, I grew up an only child in a home where my parents were very disconnected. I felt at a young age that I was talking to angels, but I didn't share that with anybody. So it wasn't really fostered because I didn't share it. I didn't really grow up in a home where sharing my feelings or my thoughts was encouraged. So basically, to this day, my parents don't really know about my gifts, which is sad, but it's true.
Well, yeah. So when I was growing up, spirituality wasn't even something that was really discussed. I had a religious part of my family, but they were extreme. So there was kind of a divide in a religious sense, right? Like there was the overly religious, and then there were the ones that were not. It really just wasn't talked about. And I think it's because it was probably such a heated, or there was a lot of layers to it amongst each other. So I didn't share anything that I thought or felt with anyone because there wasn't the environment for it. But I did know, especially as I got older, especially into my teenage years, where I felt like I was lucky. I just thought I was always lucky. Or I would just pick the right number or go to the right place at the right time, or would leave a place just in the nick of time. So I guess maybe I thought it was my gut or my intuition, but I feel like if you would have asked me for most of my life, I thought I was just lucky. It wasn't until probably 10 years ago that I really started feeling that I was intuitive, and I would actually write down things and that they would happen. Or I would keep a dream journal, and then I would remember, oh my gosh, 6 months ago, I had a dream about something like this. But I mean, this is something that's really come later into my life. And I think it came with letting go of what other people think.
I write down stuff all the time too, as proof. Okay, so then I show my husband, see, I saw this coming, or I knew that was going to happen. So that's a good thing to do. I think that's a good thing for anyone to do, to kind of get in touch with their own intuition, write things down, and then look back at it. So that
I do the same thing, same exact thing.
That's great. I like journals.
Yeah. Let's talk about, what's your favorite question? We'll start with Joanne. What's your favorite question? If a client were to come on and ask you anything to start a relationship with you, what would you like them to ask you?
It's always about where am I on my spiritual journey? How can I become more connected? Those questions are my favorite because I can give a lot of insight and guidance to where people can start their own spiritual journey. So those are my very most favorite questions. I would have to say the same thing, but also when people ask for mediumship readings, when they ask to connect to a loved one that's passed, that always lights me up.
I actually really like it when someone tells me that they keep seeing signs and they want to know what they mean, especially if it's connected to dreams or to another person. I feel like that really opens the gateway to talking about their path and kind of starting to connect all the dots that maybe they can't see. I really like to help people figure out why all of these things are happening in their life and how it can relate to them in the future.
So I would say for myself, I love direct questions. That's my first thing. It's ask me something direct. And I'm also really great at current feelings. What's going on currently, right? And figuring out, how do we get from here to where you want to go? So that's what I like. It's come at me. It doesn't matter whether it's love, whether it's your career, whether it's your spiritual journey, but what's the problem that we're trying to solve? I think that's how I operate in like a solution-based mindset. We can talk all day if you want. I like to do that too, but it's kind of like, where are you? Where is everybody else that's, in the situation, and where are you trying to go? And then how can we get from A to B? Okay. So what is your least favorite? And it can either be a specific question or topic, right? So something to talk about. What's your least favorite and why?
So my least favorite question is when somebody comes in when they feel like they already have the answer. So they're basically asking you something that they, in their mind, already know. So for an example of that would be, when are we going to get back together? And perhaps this person is going to get back together with their ex, but perhaps they're not. But if they're coming in with like, when am I getting back together? Then they are assuming that is the answer. So anything that I tell them otherwise is already shut down. What I appreciate is when people have an open mind to different paths and different possibilities, because energy changes and external circumstances and free will play a role in everybody's life. Yes, that is my least favorite.
Just as a follow-up question, how do you feel about timing questions in general?
So for me, my personal intuitive gift doesn't really see super far into the future. And I tell that people up front that typically I can see things for the next few months or so. And that's based on current energy. And just like the weather, I predict based on the current energy, but energy changes and shifts. So timing questions, if they're asking for the foreseeable future, are very reasonable. But if they're wanting to know something that's way out there, when am I going to get married? I can't really answer that. I might not be your best intuitive for that type of question.
So you would say that you see the outcome, but exactly when it's going to happen doesn't always come to you.
Absolutely.
That is my least favorite question as well, is being asked when, because it's hard to predict timeframes. And most intuitives know this. Most psychics know this. It's very challenging. So I see sometimes people will come and say, well, I heard that it was going to be on this date. Now it's not. And I said, well, that's why they don't give timeframes, because you just don't know. Just like Jen just explained, it's the energy at the time. Also, the one thing I don't enjoy is when clients feel like you can just pick up, like they just start firing questions, like you're just can just connect to it. It takes a little bit of time to connect with someone else's energy and be in that motion of it. So knowing that, if clients had a better understanding of that, it's not like we are people that just have a crystal ball in front of us or can just spit out answers. It takes that energetic connection. So I think sometimes clients need to recognize that. I don't always know what this person thinks and that person and this all in one question. It has to be kind of a connection with the person they're talking about.
In the defense of the client at times, I do feel that the platforms, when it's pay per minute and the amount that they're being charged per minute is so high. And we all know what the economy is like and what COVID's done. So they're just like, $20.
Yeah.
What's this, and they've got their next sentence lined up, and some of it is the space. But
Yeah, for sure.
Those spaces are actually training the client, though, to react that way. And then they're training us to get defensive.
My least favorite questions in general are those that are a yes/no answer. We call those closed-ended questions. Then there is no room to expand on why. And I feel like what I try to do with a client is I try to say, well, how about we look at the path to this yes or no feeling that we're having? So what I try to do when someone gives me a question like that is I try to reframe it so that it then comes across like, how is the path going to look to accomplish this goal? And I do feel what Jen is saying as well. Sometimes clients will come in with an idea of they feel that they know a yes/no answer. They already know and they want confirmation of this yes/no answer. And when you tell them, well, let's look at why I think that this may be different from what you're feeling, it tends to put them on the defensive. So I feel that if clients were taught by intuitives, the best way to ask your question to get absolute most for your results and for your time and your money, they would get so much more having to fire off questions. I absolutely understand why they do that. I would ask somebody, okay, well, you gave me a yes, no about this. Yes, no, this, yes, no, that. I feel like that leads to a snowball effect. And it's more about how to get there than what the answer is. Regarding time frames, since we were talking about that, I will go ahead and say, I am not your person for time frame. I look at the energy as it is right now, and the path to that energy is you change one variable, the time frame will change. So I am upfront with clients that I prefer not to give time frames. I can give you something like sooner rather than later, or something like I feel as if this will be within the next few months, but I cannot give this week, that week, or next year on this day.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the open-ended questions. The one thing that I wish my clients understood is that sometimes and they will say, you've picked up on all of these very specific details. I can't control necessarily which ones they are. And I can think better if you're not like boom, 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 boom on me. So if you're like, hey, what is going to happen in this situation? And I have 30 seconds to kind of get my thoughts, and then I'm able to keep going. A lot of times when I'm able to keep going, you'll get more and more. But I will get specific things, but it's not every specific thing. And I'm not a remote viewer, meaning I don't see into somebody's house right now and spy on them. And I'm also not a mind reader. I don't know the exact words that go through other people's heads, but I can pick up on the general energy, where it's going. And if somebody's like teeter-tottering, that another person that you're inquiring about is teeter-tottering, a lot of times I can kind of pick up on if there's anything that you can do to kind of help the energy go in your way. Yeah, I do. I'll just say I can get seasons, but again, that's very general. And then I even had somebody say, oh, well, I happen to be in Australia, and it was like a year from now for them. So I don't know. My ideal client would come on and they would ask a question about a specific area of their life and would allow me to talk for 2 minutes even, and then ask follow-up questions. And then we could go from there. That's how you would get the most from me. What's your favorite topic? Like, is it love? Is it career? Is it just general spirituality?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like most people that I've worked with ask about love. So I've learned to love talking about love, I guess I would say. But if I had to pick a favorite topic aside from that, I would say that I really enjoy, as we kind of mentioned earlier, talking about somebody's spiritual path and how they can become their best selves, like just straight up. How can I increase my intuition? How can I, align my chakras? How can I get to where I want to be? How can I be my highest self?
I actually really like when people ask about particular signs or past life or spirit guide questions, because past life is actually my forte. And it even freaks me out, some of the details that I would get with people. And it opens up questions as to, oh, well, maybe this is why I'm stuck in this area in my life. And then you can get into like what Jen said, and you can start to help the person open themselves up and figure out why this situation may be coming up over and over again. I also think it gives the client a little bit of reassurance that maybe it's not just you. Maybe this situation is coming up over and over again because there is a lesson you need to learn, and the lesson is not being learned. So the universe keeps handing it to you life after life for time after time. And we can get into that and look at it and see kind of where your blockage is. So we can do that with love, or we can do that with relationships or career or anything. So definitely past life, or if you keep having a certain dream over and over, that's a subconscious thing and it helps to reveal blocks. Anything of that nature, I feel like that's really my forte.
Same as Jen. I really enjoy talking to people about the spiritual journey, how to be their best selves. I've been a holistic healer for the last 15 years. So anything I can impart on the client to do for themselves, to heal, to move forward, anything like that. And I've actually started to really enjoy love questions. I do get mostly a lot of that too. And it's kind of cool to see the answers or to kind of gain insight from another person. And a lot of my clients are open to understanding themselves better in their love relationships and why they keep creating those patterns. So that always makes me happy too.
I like relationship readings just in general. And it's great if it's love, but if you want to talk about your mom or your sister or a friend or coworkers, we spend a lot of time with certain people. And sometimes the only thing that we have in common is I don't know, maybe our kids go to the same school or they happen to have the cubicle next to us. Those relationships are important too. So I have learned to love relationship readings, but I just like it as long as we're focused on the journey rather than just the destination, right? Why was this person put in our presence? What can we learn from the situation that, we're not learning? How can we improve the situation? And then also, if you can't do anything about it, that's a newer thing that I've been talking to clients a lot about is like, what is acceptance? And what does it feel like? And what does it look like? Because not every single thing can be changed, right? Other people's personalities, what they're going to do, where their office is located in relation to yours. We don't have control over everything. And then how are we happy? Anyway, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? I still do. I want to be a talk show hostess. I want to talk to everybody about their lives, get to know who they are. I mean, I had a little cable show in my town. I love getting to know people and all about them. So that's really what I still do.
I wanted to be two things. I wanted to be a veterinarian and a famous author. I wanted to write animal fiction or kind of sci-fi fantasy fiction. Once I learned what was involved in the veterinary profession and that it did involve having your friends cross over, I could not do it. However, I did get to work in many veterinary offices and I still volunteer at animal shelters and I do still write. I have worked for a major publishing company and I have also helped many college students edit their essays or their dissertation or even their novels that they were submitting for publication. So I really love the editor aspect of writing now more than I thought that I would. I would still love to be a famous author, but the veterinarian part, maybe we can just move on to the dog foster.
Okay. And Joanne, I mean, I feel like you have the public speaker vibe. You do it so well.
I am a speaker. I had a job I am a speaker. I've been a speaker for 20 years. So that's what I do too. But I've always
That's great.
done that. Yeah.
Okay. So how about you, Jen?
Well, this ship has sailed, but what I wanted to be as a child was a Broadway musical dancer. So that one, we'll skip on that. The next thing was a teacher, which I feel like tie into what we're talking about. I feel like I am a teacher, and that's part of why my mission here is to help others help themselves.
I wanted to be a teacher too. So I think that it's interesting that we have like teachers and healers and even speakers. The speakers are teachers too, right? Because they're bold and they're able to stand up and say things in a relatable way that other people can hear you. But yeah, I wanted to be, and I have been, but since COVID, working in schools is not what it used to be. And now I really have enjoyed working from home. So I would like to teach like one-on-one at adult level rather than in an educational institution anymore. Okay. So Jade, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the group?
I do have one that I think is always really interesting. What is a really prominent spiritual experience that you have that kind of made an impression on you that you still carry with you to this day?
Gosh, I mean, I've had a few, but I will say the one that was the most pivotal for me, I was probably 17 years old. My first job, it was like my first real job, my first car, and I didn't have the money, my car payment. And my mother was a waitress and she had money always in her nightstand. So I went to her nightstand and I took $60 out of it to make up for my car payment or my car insurance or whatever it was that I was short. And I was going to work, but I had to pay it. In my mind, I was going to go to work. I was for sure going to make $60 and I was going to put it back. And like, it was a 2-hour borrow, right? And you do have to keep in mind, I didn't have a cell phone. So you couldn't just call like if somebody was at home and do these things. I came home and my sister was getting in trouble for taking the $60 because my sister was the type to absolutely, be doing this type of thing all the time. The situation was escalating between my mother and my sister. And, I went to interject a couple times. Then I was like, no, I think I'm just going to go. So I left. And the next day I went to work. And do you remember those waitressing books, the black book?
Yeah.
They have them.
They do.
I was driving to the bank, but we didn't have automatic windows. So it was, I rolled the window down. There's just a little bit of a crack and I was counting the money and then the light turned green. I had to turn left. And when I turned left at the window, it created a suction and it sucked out $60 even. And it was the next day. And so I turned in and I turned into the bank and I was kind of shaking. I already knew how much money was going to be missing, but I was like, there's no way that it was like $60 even. I was like, there's no way that $60 is going to be missing. It's not possible. It's not possible. And I counted up and it was like not just 20s, like 3 20s. It was between maybe 10s, 5s, and 1s, $60 even had pulled out. And I just remember sitting there looking out the window. I had not even pulled into the lane. And that was a moment for me. And it was a direct cause and effect. And I had known before when I had done things and gotten a consequence that was indirect, like karma, right? You might call it karma. But that's when I started, at least in my mind, to start thinking beyond luck. It's not just luck, right? Luck is when you get things right sometimes, but it was that feeling that somebody's watching and things will always be made right in the end.
One of the most profound experiences I ever had was when I was starting to do this work publicly as an intuitive and a psychic. I was working in a small shop in the town that I grew up in. So I was a little bit, I'd been working as a speaker and I just had a career that was not at all in a spiritual realm or anything like that. So it seemed like it was a lot for me. Some people think if you want to do this job, just take a couple classes, hold up a shingle and you're good. You have to come up, as you all probably recognize, against every single fear that you've ever had. Every self-doubt comes up pretty quickly when you start to put yourself out there. So I was working at this shop in the town I grew up in. I was still asking for signs from the angels, from my parents. My mother was still alive then, asking signs. I was very close to my dad, and he had died about a year before I started putting myself out publicly. And so I was working in the shop. Sometimes when people would come into the shop, I would talk to them and ask them if they wanted a little reading, and I'd go into this room with them. So this couple came in, and they were so sweet. And so I went into the room with them. I asked them if they wanted a reading, and they started talking to me about their situation, where they were. They were divorced, but they were wanting to get back together, all these things. So I sat down with them. And the gentleman looked at me in the eyes. It was like a moment in time froze. I just started crying. I connected with him and just started crying. And to me, it was just unbelievable. I collected myself, whatever, and I will never forget this. They were hugging me and they were saying they were going to come back again and all this. But the man, when he looked back at me, I asked him what his name was. And he said, "My name is Dawn." And then they laughed, whatever. And I was still shook up and blown away. So I was, contacting some of my mentors and my best friends. And everybody said, that was my father came in. And then I was like, really, and then at the end, one of my mentors said, "What was the man's name again?" And I said, "It was Dawn." And then she said, "What was your father's name?" And I said, "It was Dawn." And then it was whoa, it really felt like it was a sign. It was researching some of that, I felt like it was maybe my dad came through this gentleman for a split second in time. But this was 15 years ago, and I can still feel all of the feelings around it. So that was probably to this day still the most profound spiritual experience I've ever had.
That is so neat. That's amazing.
Some people might think I'm crazy, but to me, it allowed me to progress on the journey of being out there spiritually as someone that's doing this work. So it's worth it.
I feel like the people who say you're crazy haven't had that experience yet.
Yeah.
Everyone will have at least one.
So when I was about 23, I had a dream where I was lifted out of my body and kind of taken through this doorway into what I can now label as the other side. On the other side, I was taken to this woman who said she was my spirit guide and she named herself. And then I was quickly flown over to this area where there were these picnic tables and my aunt was there, my Aunt Franny. And I was like, Aunt Franny, what are you doing here? And she said, when I come back in the next life, I want to be Jennifer L. And I said, okay. And she was clear as day. It was like looking at the three of you right now. And I also caught a glimpse of my friend's grandmother. I'll never forget, clear as day. Okay, this was an interesting, very vivid dream that I had. And I woke up the next day and my mother told me that my Aunt Franny had died. It was extremely powerful for me to know that I got to visit with her. And she did hug me in the dream too. I left that part out. So that was the beginning of knowing that I had some kind of mediumship skill. And I also told my friend that I saw her grandmother there, which of course made her cry, but I wanted to share that with her. It brought her comfort as well. So
my own personal story is when I was 19, I went to college twice in my life. I went once for a music degree that I forgot to mention that I have. And then I went back later in my 30s for 2 other degrees. When I first got to college, I started to fail a bunch of classes. I had never failed anything in my life. I had been a straight A student. I didn't know what was going on. And that night I went to bed and I had a dream where there was an old lady in olive colored robes. And she came to me and put a hex or a curse on me. And the hex or the curse was whenever you touch something, if a loved one then touches that thing, something bad will happen to them. And the dream went into this sequence where that happened with loved ones that I knew. And I was running and I didn't know what was going on. I was in the forest and came to a wooden table with 4 necklaces on it. And one had an eagle, one had a turtle, one had a wolf, and one was plain and had nothing at all. And she told me to choose one. Felt in the dream like no matter which one I picked, it was going to be wrong. Well, I had always had a connection with wolves ever since I was little. So of course I put the wolf necklace on. And like the image of a wolf superimposed itself over my body. And I started to hear like Native American drums. And then I saw this shaman type figure who was nodding his head. And I said, okay. And I looked at her and she just kind of disappeared and evaporated. And at first I thought, well, that was just a really interesting dream. And then I went to a Native American powwow. I had no idea it was open to the public. And someone came up to me and saw the wolf in me and gave me a necklace with a wolf one. It was a wooden carved necklace.
wow.
And I went home and I asked my mom, I called her and I said, do we have Native American in our bloodline? Because every white girl thinks that they have Native American in them these days. And my mom said, yes, your biological grandfather that I had only met twice was full-blooded Natchez Indian. And she said, you definitely have this you. And it freaked me out. And essentially I talked to some elders at that point. And I had had a vision quest. And it's uncommon for women to have a vision quest. It's usually the men that do this, and you drink peyote and you do very specific rituals. Mine happened organically on my own. And sometimes I still think about this and it freaks me out because the wolf comes all the time in many different forms as a sign. I even have them tattooed on my body. So that is an experience that stayed with me forever. It probably will stay forever. Thank you all for sharing all really cool stories.
Yeah.
Allison's especially freaked me out because I feel like I've had those same types of things happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was 17 at the time. So it was like there was just, different dynamics of the house. And it was that I didn't go into it with bad intentions, but I didn't do the right thing in the moment. And there was like a direct consequence for that. The universe made it right. And that had me, it still does, but really then I felt like it shaped my personality a little bit because it gave me such a feeling. I just remembered, at least for 2 years, where I was very consciously always thinking about if I was doing the right thing or like what was going to happen to me if I didn't.
I'd like to ask everybody, what kind of made you want to work with people? What made you want to help people in this way as an intuitive or someone that's a counselor, holding space for others? What is it that made you want to do that?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. As a child and a teenager, I tended to be the person that everybody came to with their issues, with their problems. I was also kind of someone who brought people together too, if that makes sense. Different friend groups, like somehow I was the one in the center of all that, bringing people together. And also listening to people's problems and feeling like I was very empathetic, able to hold space at a young age for my friends. And so quickly after, being a teenager going into college, having psychology as my major, it just clicked so quickly having that experience and feeling like that was my calling to help other people on their journey. At the time, it wasn't necessarily the spiritual journey. It was more of their emotional journey, but the two are completely, interrelated, as we know, mind, body, and spirit.
I was kind of introverted growing up. I was in a program called Gifted and Talented, and I'm sure some of you have also been in a similar program. It's basically where they take the smart kids and the ultra creative kids and they put them together in a room of like 10 people. And you have half a day of that, and then you had half a day of regular school. And I noticed that I had these interesting interactions with the creative kids, but it was the kids who were really super high IQ that would come to me and say things like, how are you always so calm? Because they could make book reports and things. And you had to stand up in front of people. And these children had very, very high anxiety. And I had the ability to just calm them down. Even though I myself had anxiety when I was younger, I always found that I could immediately switch it off for someone else and be that calm person when someone else was having a crisis. And eventually I started doing things like I did retail and I worked with people. Well, I didn't like that as much because you have to act a certain way and you can't really form the connection that you want. Then I got into a particular type of counseling. And I was again with these people who had high anxiety and who were very, very nervous about their situation. And the comment that I got the most was, you really calmed me down. You really calmed me down. And when I realized that I had that ability, even though I was somewhat introverted, I really wanted to be the person that could calm someone down and could help them get through a crisis. And I started to just really enjoy that. So I think that's what made me really want to work with people, even if it was a little bit later in life than most people would come across something like that.
Kind of feel like it was later in life for me as well. I mean, I always felt like the black sheep. That would have always been my thing in my family, just in different areas. That's how I felt. So then I realized that I started naturally attracting other black sheeps and people that think that nobody understands them, and you do understand them. So I had started to realize that about myself, but I went to college before going to beauty school. When I was in college, what I learned there was that I was like, I don't know that just sitting at a desk every day, that's really for me. Like, I'm more creative, I'm more this. So somehow or another, I got it in my head that I wanted to become a hairdresser because I wanted to empower women. I wanted to make women feel as beautiful on the outside as they are on the inside. And it did not take me very long after actually becoming a hairdresser to realize that why my clients were coming back was the conversation, that I was really healing people already through our talks, right? And that's when COVID had hit. And I thought, of course, like, I'll be a hairdresser again at some point, right? But when I really started thinking about it, it was like, I missed talking to people. I really didn't miss doing their hair or standing on my feet all day. That wasn't really the part that I missed, but I missed interacting with people. And so that is why, like, during COVID, I decided to get on a platform and see how that went. And for the most part, I really loved it. I mean, there were some things that were like clear things that needed to change about the system. But I was like, this is great because I can log on and I can talk to these people and I can do everything that I used to do and I love doing from home. But then now it's been years of doing that. And it's like, okay, there's just so many caps and there's so many restrictions. And even though we do help people currently, I would like to help them more. And that's why I'm working on the Intuition Center.
I think for myself, it's sort of like when I started seeing shifts and changes, when I started learning, that we are the creator of our destiny and we can manifest, and
all of those things, and how my life changed so much. I wanted to help other people in the same ways, like to learn these things. And also, I think sometimes at a certain point in your life, you feel disconnected. Like, is this all there is? A lot of my clients over the years have been that person that's sort of like lost. And so helping people touch back into their own divinity is part of what has always sparked me to want to help people in that way too. My question would be, if you could just give us the mantra that you live your life by, what would it be?
Be the change you want to see in the world is my mantra. And I say this to people in readings. I say it to people in counseling. I also do Reiki. I am a Reiki master. So I say that to people in Reiki, that if you want to see a change in someone else's behavior, do not try to change them. Be the change that you want to see. You be it, because the only person you have control over is yourself. So if there's something that you don't like, you be the change.
That's a good one.
It is really good. I've actually thought, well, when you were talking, I was thinking, what is the thing that I think to myself most often? And it's not necessarily a mantra, but it is kind of like, what are you going to do about it? So just like everybody else, I get frustrated, I get upset, I get, whenever feeling something about whatever just happened. And my immediate, so you don't spiral out of control, is like, what am I going to do about it? So like, it is like, can I change the situation? Am I willing to change the situation? Or is there nothing that can be done? And usually once I just go through that little thought process, I'm like already over it, right? Because I'm either now motivated to make a change, or I'm just like, okay, this is something that's really outside of my control. So just move forward. But yeah, I would say mine is, what are you going to do about it?
I would say it's somewhat do unto others. I would try to do my best
To others as I would want them to do back to me. So I think of all those other things. I've been through a lot of different philosophies on life and manifesting and creating and all of those things. And so I think I'm at the place now where it's just sort of, I want to be someone that's good to people and loving, and hope that they return that to me.
And that's beautiful. Well, mine is tattooed on my wrist here. It says courage over comfort.
Oh,
And basically that means going within to, keep using the same word, your empowerment, your courage to change your life. If you are not happy with what's going on in your life, you can change it. You have everything that you need within you. That I'm still working on that. I'm not saying I'm there. That's why I have my reminder, but that is my mantra that I try to live by.
I just have one last question for everyone. And that would be, if you could give a client just like one piece of advice, what's one piece of advice that like you wish more people understood?
something that I do tell clients almost all the time is that nothing anyone else does is because of you. It is because of their perception of reality of the situation. No one is doing something because you made them. You cannot make another person do anything. It is their choice. It is how they see the situation. If you ask two people in the same situation what happened, you will get two different stories. And it is based on how they are internalizing it, their experiences, and what they get out of that experience. So nothing anyone does is because of you will change your life. That way you don't feel like did this. You didn't do it. It's how the other person perceived it and how they reacted to it.
I would say, I always say this, and I know it's so blanketed. You have everything you need within you.
I say it to myself too, but we do need, a lot of times we do need that help to pull it out of us. But I do believe we all have everything we need right here within us. And I think for most of us, we already know the answer. We're looking for that support or that kind of guidance. But if you really get still within, you have your own answer. So trust your intuition.
I think it's in the same vein as both of what you guys are saying, which is you can't change external circumstances, but you can manage how you react to them. You have control over your emotions, whether you believe that or not. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad, but what are you going to do with those feelings? Are you going to throw a tantrum, or are you going to try to direct that somewhere else that's more healthy and effective.
Nothing is impossible except whatever you think is. That's really it. It's like the universe is abundant. And that is something that I feel like I say it in a lot of different ways. But, people always think like, am I going to be with this person or this person? Who told you had two options? I go online and I just don't see, any jobs that really call out to me or whatever. And it's like, but there's more than what's just on that site. Do you know what I mean? It's just like people kind of get a very narrow vision in regards to how they, like what they think their options are. And it's like, no, the universe is abundant and the odds are always in your favor. People are like, it's so hard to find a date. And it's like, yeah, but what if I told you there's a billion people in this world and you're only looking for one? The odds are in your favor. It's just, I feel like as people, we tend to feel like the deck is always stacked against us, or we see all of the limitations, but it's like that limitation is only as big as you make it. So instead of trying to remove that limitation, or like, can you build a door? In your matrix of your mind, can you open a window? Can you build a door? Or is it just you facing that obstacle? What is it? Because if I told you you actually had all of the power within you to draw a door or to open a window wherever you're at, your back is never truly up against the wall, then what would you do? And that usually gets people stopped right there. They don't usually have much more to say. They just have to think on that. But it's like, you are source. You are your own creator.
That is so great, because that's another thing I think we all need to hear and be reminded of, because you get into this small mindset sometimes. A lot of people do. Or if you've only been in this certain circumstance with certain people, that's your exposure. That's all you know. So you need to see that there's possibilities. And I think you telling clients that, being the person who's the mentor of that, is huge. And people need that.
I mean, I've had somebody say I really need a job and I've applied to everything on Indeed. I cannot pay. I'm literally scared I can't pay my rent at the end of the month. And I said, have you walked into a McDonald's? And they were like, no. And I was like, if you notice, there's no fast food restaurants on Indeed. But if you walk into a McDonald's and tell them your schedule and ask them if you can work full time, I was like, I'm just kind of feeling like they're not going to say no. But let's say they do drive down the street and go to Wendy's and try it. Give me 2 shots. They walked into the McDonald's and they said yes. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, if in your mind, it's what's on Indeed, then your options are limited. But are you willing to do, start at the bottom? Are you willing to do worst case scenario options? Because if you're willing to do worst case scenario options right now, you can make a change in your life.
Something else that I feel is really important that even we can benefit from, and that I tell clients a lot too, is always do your best. Caveat, your best will differ every single day. Someday your best is getting out of bed. Someday your best is you did the dishes. Someday your best is you went to the gym and you went to the bank and you did this and you did this and you did all these things on your to-do list. Don't hold that best to what today's best may be. Sometimes there are so many different factors. It's hard to feel like, well, I really did what I could. But I tell my clients a lot, ask yourself, did you do your best today? Not have you done your best overall? Not are you going to do your best tomorrow? Living in the moment, and did you do your best today? If you can honestly say, yes, I did my best today, you're good.
That's huge for women too. I feel like as women, we tend to try and do everything, and there's no way that we can. And then we neglect ourselves to a degree, and then our energy pours out of us, but we don't pour back in. So that's another really important thing, is to make sure you're pouring back into your own energy. Self-care, soul growth work is what I call it.
Women try to do everything and be hot while they're doing it.
Yeah.
There's not one woman here today that didn't put effort into her appearance. We all sat in front of the mirror and with, how do I look? How do I look? How do I look?
Yeah. I wonder if men think like that. Am I so hot while I'm doing this? Random.
I know one. Yeah. I know one that does.
Well, I'm sure we all know one, but I'm just saying it's not the majority like with women.
Yeah.